Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to ANN, American News Network. I'm your host, Vlad. Today, we have special guests with us, Matt and Andrew from the Boomerang Podcast. They are sponsors of today's video, and they are with Midas Gold Group. You guys have heard about it. Many of you have already invested and protected your money from Bidenomics. In this video, we want to talk about the wars that are happening in the world, BRICS building a new currency to take down the dollar, and how all this affects how is your 401k going to do, how are your savings, whether it's in the bank or cash under the pillow, what to expect, and how to protect yourself and your family and your finances. So, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Matt and Andrew. And Matt, Andrew, first question is, the wars, Israel, Ukraine, we see Iran, we see what's happening. Where do you see just even the dollar on a global stage within the next year? What do you think will happen?
Well, it's good to be with you, Vlad. Thanks for having us on. To answer your question, war is typically pretty good for precious metals. It creates things like uncertainty. People start to fear, supply chain issues, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, you could see countries start defaulting on debt. We're already starting to see that here. We've seen, a string of 6 or 7 U.S. banks going under so far this year. Yeah. I would expect to continue to see that trend, and certainly, with wars going on, et cetera, that you're going to see that playing out overseas as well.
All right. And so whenever the dollar, and pretty much in short term, if the dollar, and because with the wars, we saw the dollar take a dive. We see the economy, but gold will go up, is what you're saying. Does go gold, silver, precious metals.
You got to remember is gold and silver are very manipulated in the paper market. See, we work in the physical, right? So when you come to Midas Gold Group, we're just a storefront, right? We're just a gold shop. We're right here on, West Deer Valley Road here in Phoenix, Arizona, right? So people can walk in, they can buy, sell, trade. So as far as gold prices, gold and silver are manipulated. There's also a paper market, right? There's something called the commodities exchange, or known as the COMEX, right? And what the banks figured out is they can short gold and silver while maintaining control of technically the supply. So what they do is they create paper contracts. So every 1 ounce of silver or gold that the bank has, they might leverage, 500 to 1,000 ounces on top of that. So specifically JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citi, these are the 3 major manipulators of gold and silver. And they have an incentive to keep gold and silver low, because if gold and silver really took off, what would that say about the US dollar, right? People would start exiting the dollar and going into precious metals. And of course, that's why the politicians, they let these banks get away with it. They let them get away with murder.
And you're right, Vlad, when the Dixie, the dollar goes down, gold does go up in value historically.
So when the war started between Ukraine, Russia, and Russia took the ruble off the oil standard and they went back to the gold standard, how did that affect gold?
Not much at all. It's kind of an isolated scenario where the ruble, Putin decided to back the ruble by gold, but they're really just backing it internally within Russia. It really doesn't have too much impact in terms of the actual gold price.
What about so I looked into the currency that BRICS is talking about building. They are saying the new currency that they're going to build, they're going to back it with gold.
Correct.
Well, so now we have more than 50% of the world, because you have China, you have India, you have Russia, South Africa, now Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. They're all going to use a currency that's going to be backed by gold. Do you think that will affect it?
I do, absolutely. I think one thing that we see is these world banks, are buying up a lot of gold and silver. They're telling, just here in America, they're telling us, hey, the dollar's fine, the economy's fine. We're going to have a light recession maybe going into 2024, but keep your money in the markets, keep your money in the banks. They're liquid, they're fine. We know that's really not the case. I think what happens is, you're keeping the individuals, happy in the system that we are letting them feel like they're safe. But we always see where the big money's going, right? And you're seeing these sovereign nations and world banks again buying tons of gold and silver, more than they bought in the last 3, 4, 5 years combined. So I think it takes time for it to hit the market again. With the commodities exchange and how they can kind of suppress the spot price, the paper market. You're not going to see it until it's going to happen all at once, right? Happen very quickly. When you look at 2008 financial crisis, you're going to go back and look at a gold chart and see all of a sudden we're at, doubled, tripled, quadrupled in, just a matter of a couple quick months. And I think that probably the same thing will happen here. The BRICS nations, they're very interesting because, they've been around for, 23 years and they really haven't done much. They tried to create a bank to, compete with the IMF, I think called like the IDF. And in, I think the 20 or 23 years of existence, they've never, issued out a dollar, right? They never, sent a dollar out or loaned it out. These nations also tried to collaborate and have, fiber optics going underneath their seas and connectivity between these countries. And they've never even started that project. So historically, it's been pretty slow moving with BRICS. I think up until now, recently, they've really started to grow and come about, and in 19, let me grab my cheat sheet, but, in the 90s, BRICS were, just a couple percent of global GDP. Now they're over 30%. They're actually, greater than the G7. I think with the new countries that are wanting to come in, if they get accepted, that'll bring the global GDP for the BRICS nations up to 45%. And again, G7's, just barely under 30%. So I think they're growing. You look at like just the oil production, they have over 50% of global oil. If you have Russia and now you have Saudi Arabia, UAE, I mean, you essentially have all OPEC plus in this one currency that they're creating. And, now with where they're growing, you have, 46% of the global population. The G7's less than 10%. BRICS has 36% of the global landmass. So I think they're really fighting the dollar. And I think the big reason behind all this is, we've really, how would you even say? We've used the dollar for our advantage, right? We've weaponized the dollar for other countries, whether it be, allowing people in and out of SWIFT, sanctions. And I think a lot of these countries are saying, hey, when we're trading with the G7 or we're trading with the US, we'll play by your rules. But I think the pushback is when they're just trading amongst each other, it has nothing to do with the G7 or the US. Like, why do we have to play, the US's rules? And I think that's a big catalyst for pushing these countries into the BRICS nations. So I think that's really going to affect the price of commodities, gold, silver, oil in the future. But they also do have their own internal problems, right? China and India, I mean, they hate each other, right? So, and they're landlocked, they fight wars to this day, little battles on the border. So, they have their own issues, but I think it's definitely something to watch. And I think it'll be very interesting to see, the gold, silver and, other commodities, their prices, how they fluctuate over the next few months.
We think that it's not going to be the price that's prohibitive to buy gold. It's going to be your ability to get it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been very interested in the whole BRICS situation because these aren't like top of the class, like America standard countries. But for instance, like I have a lot of relatives in Ukraine. I have a lot of relatives in Russia, in Israel, in Germany. And for the last 10 years, my relatives who live in Russia have been, my parents were like, we left in 98. We came here. The ones that were not able to leave or, it was a longer process, by the maybe like 2007, 2008, they just said, we don't want to go anymore. The quality of life here is just growing. Now, they're like, they'll offer, when they, read about the financial situation in the United States, they offer us help. You won't hear this on the news.
Correct.
But do a little research. You look at their roads, you look at their buildings, you look at their jobs just skyrocketing. And there you see that they're finally serious about that. Yes, and it's not maybe like a threat that I think will be here in a year or two, but it's not going to be in so far away as many people like to believe. Then with when they had the meeting of BRICS, Saudi Arabia and Iran, for instance, they also hate each other. But yet to join BRICS, you have to have a peace agreement. Like, and I know that right now, China and India, Russia is like in the middle of trying to help them figure it out.
Right.
And when they had their last meeting, I remember the president of South Africa said, hey guys, the United States produces nothing. I don't know if you guys saw that video, but the president of South Africa said they produce nothing. They give us nothing. Their only power is the dollar. And if they don't like what you do, or if they don't like how you handle internal affairs, for instance, the LGBT garbage that we try to push on everybody, even though, their culture is so against it, he says, then they sanction the dollar. He said, we're tired of being slaves to the dollar. Let's do something.
Exactly.
Right?
Weaponizing the
where
dollar.
it came out to where, because now they understand we don't really need the United States. What do they give us besides their currency? And this is where all these countries that hate each other, like, again, Iran and Saudi Arabia, they're willing to put their hate for each other aside because there's something they hate even more. And that is how the uniparty or the swamp uses the dollar to pretty much submit anyone into obedience.
Yeah, well, here's an inverted look at it. I mean, it's what you just said, where I'm hearing rumors that there could be a coordinated sell-off of U.S. Treasury bills by the different BRICS nations, which could completely bankrupt our country. So they have a weapon too, which is holding our debt. It's actually being used against us, or could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even internally, like a lot of things that you're talking about, how, we might, put these restrictions on other countries that aren't doing things, what the U.S. wants. They do internally to us, right? And I think that's a big reason why you're seeing a lot of people in the U.S. getting their money out of the banks, out of the market, and into things like gold and different commodities that might hold value, real estate, whatever it may be. I think it works both ways. So I can almost sympathize with some of these BRICS nations of like, hey, this is the culture of our country. This is how we run our internal politics. 20, 30 years ago, a lot of these countries were so, I don't want to say they're just so young, infancy of, becoming, a first world country. And now they've gone through a lot of that turmoil, and a lot of them are a little bit more established than they were, right? These aren't just, farmers and, open land and things like that. These are emerging countries that are coming up. And I think, they're getting tired of the dollar being used against them, being a slave to the dollar, like you just said. And that's why they would be interested in using a different currency. And of course, right, if we end up doing something to hurt ourselves and they can, kind of have coordinated attack of dropping, our treasury bills or, whatever to try to hurt us, they'll take advantage of that if they get the opportunity.
Yeah, and they look at our big cities, the homelessness, the drugs, the crime. You won't find that in China. You won't see that in Russia. Even in South Africa. We have a worse homeless and drug problem in our major cities, crimes. There, you steal something, they'll cut your hand off. Here, you can rob someone at gunpoint. They'll take your fingerprints and let you go home.
Yeah.
And
Chicago's probably one of the more dangerous places around the world. I'd rather go to a lot of places than go to Chicago, South Side.
Yeah. And those things also, I think there's a lot of aspects, correct me if I'm wrong, but even society, our currency depends on the state of our society.
Absolutely.
Right. How can the dollar remain strong if America as a society is collapsing, if we're being divided? So my like final question is, so you guys with your gold company, right? And people, they save their money, they protect their money. For most people understand what is like a stock market investment. Most people understand at least somewhat cryptocurrency, but from the emails I've been receiving, a lot of younger people don't even know like how IRAs really work. If you guys can take a few minutes to explain how you guys are different, like if someone wanted to protect their money or invest into something, why is it better to do it with you guys than, let's say, cryptocurrency?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I think gold and silver are going to be a much better bet than cryptocurrency. And the reason I say it is because what is money? Money is an agreement. It's an understanding.
Consensus.
It's a consensus of value, right? Most people in this country, I think it's people over 65 hold about 70% of the wealth. It's going to be very difficult to convince the older folks that cryptocurrencies are it's really money, right? I think cryptocurrencies are great. We're big believers in them, right? We have some picks if people want to know kind of the stuff we buy in crypto. But gold and silver are just savings, really. And when you do it in an IRA, What you're doing is you're taking an existing IRA or 401k, and instead of your strategy being, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, what have you, more traditional assets, you're just moving that into physical gold and physical silver. And what Drew and I kind of pride ourselves on is really the stuff that we put people in an American gold eagles, American silver eagles. It's the way to go. It's constitutional money, right? And what I would say makes us different is we're not a call center. We're an actual storefront. So we can actually grab your gold from, it's about 100 feet away from me right now. We've got millions of dollars of gold and silver in our vaults, right? So we'll actually go bring that stuff. We'll send it to the actual depository or to your doorstep, depending on what you're doing, right? Everything's been verified. We run everything through a spectrometer, which verifies gold and silver, right? We make sure the products you're getting are real. But like I said, we're a storefront. We're not some call center. You see a lot of these companies, they're advertised on a lot of the conservative radio stations. These are just call centers. They're out of Los Angeles, right? There's no gold or silver in these facilities, right? Your rep who you're dealing with has no idea what it is that you're getting. They have no idea the validity of it, right? With us, we're just a storefront. You could come in here, sit down, see what we have, right? We're more of a mom and pop shop.
Right. And I think a big thing in how we try to tell people is like you've spent 20, 30, 40 years, with your life savings in your retirement account, right? And this isn't a time to gamble. We don't promise, hey, gold's going to go to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. But what we do say is, hey, are you worried about, the liquidity of our banks? Are you worried about where our market's heading, right? This isn't the time to just put your head in the sand and, let your retirement account go down 30, 40%, right? In times of uncertainty, fear, and doubt is when you want to get out of the market, get out of the banks, put in something physical like gold and silver that's never, ever gone to zero in the history of people ever using it. So it's more of just a safe play. It's, you spent all this time accumulating, your retirement account, and you just, right before you retire, we're going into these crazy wars. We have Joe Biden, sitting in the White House, making terrible decisions. And it's just like, is that, you really want your money, wrapped up in the system right now with those type of people's making our decisions? And usually the answer is like, absolutely not. Get me the hell out of there. And that's what we do. We make it very simple for people to come through. Takes you all but 10 minutes of your time. We do all the legwork. We have two girls out here that are really the backbone of the operation, dealing with Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Goldman Sachs, because they don't want to give up your money, right? They do not want to get that money out of their system, right? That's how they make money, is on the percent fees of managing it, right? So when we go there, we have to call these guys 2, 3, 4 times just for somebody to get their own money out of Fidelity, right? Because they don't want to give it up. And even when they do allow you to do it, they're going to make you wait 4 weeks for your funds to arrive. So once people see that, they're like, oh my God, get me out of this, and that's what we offer is, clean business, make it super simple and easy. And, it's a way you can go to bed at night and feel a little bit more secure about, your life's work and your money in your retirement account. So
our system's a construct of the deep state, right? The Federal Reserve, it's a Marxist organization.
Yeah.
Right. Our system, you can look at it on a timeline. It was designed to print money to infinity and then crash, right? It's just who's going to be in control of that crash. I personally think it's going to be the good guys. I think Trump will come back at the right time. My understanding is Donald Trump's going to walk this country through bankruptcy.
Okay.
He has the experience from the 90s. So he knows,
Who better?
Yeah, and it's just something I've mentioned to people before. It's like my parents and my grandparents, uncles and aunts, and I'm 31, so I was born a couple of years after the fall of the Soviet Union. But the horrors that happened. So people went to sleep one night living in a country called the Soviet Union. They had a bunch of money. The last 30 years of the Soviet Union were not bad, like people say. When Stalin died, the workforce exploded. People were, after you work for I think 20 years, you get a brand new apartment for free from the government. Like it was, life wasn't actually that bad, but because communism, the rule from top down instead of sharing power, and such a huge country and so diverse. I mean, just in Russia, there's 6 different languages. Like you go there, you go to Turkmenistan, that's one thing. You go to Siberia, it's something else. But people went to sleep in the Soviet Union. They had money in the bank. They had money under their pillow. They had a bunch of life savings. And they woke up in Ukraine, the Russian Federation, Belarus, and their money was worth nothing. Banks shut down. Their money that was there, it either just evaporated or the money at home dissolved to nothing. And my father even talks about how many people just took their own lives, or they became alcoholics or drug addicts? Just you lose everything. You want to go buy some bread. What do you it's nothing. It's just paper now.
Yeah,
And
right.
then so you go to sleep with money in a country that's working. It's not the greatest, but at least it's a society. And you wake up, you're in a brand new country, and everything's collapsed. And so we are in the United States. God forbid that happens, but nothing's guaranteed. And I always say, when I was reading about, Midas Gold Group and IRAs, if they actually had their currency with physical gold, silver, at least those people would have been somewhat all right.
Yeah,
Right?
fiat
And that's
currencies
kind of
would
another
change.
thing that an IRA does for you. Even if your currency collapses, you have something physical, which gold will never be worth nothing.
Correct. And fiat currencies, they'll come and go, right? Just like you were talking about, within USSR, people went to sleep, they had
Weimar
life
Germany.
savings. Yeah, all that. Now, had they diversified in some gold and silver, right, it really wouldn't matter what the currency is, because you could always convert it into another currency of your choice when depending on what country you go to. So that's why I always tell people, it's like, you don't have to go all in, but it's worth diversifying and getting out of the paper market, right? It's something tangible. And I think that's probably the big difference between, like gold and like crypto, right? A lot of times people want to say Bitcoin's the digital gold. And actually, I like that analogy, and I like it because you can actually take it off the exchange, put in cold storage, just like your gold you can put in, right? There's a privacy aspect to it, and physically with gold and silver, somebody has to come and take that from you, right? Which means they'd have to know what you have and where you have it. So I like that privacy, part of gold and silver, and I think the scariest thing in the world would be in all dollars, in a bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, gold and silver are a great savings tool. I would really encourage your viewers to consider, rather than stacking cash in a bank, because those are just digits on a screen. When you log into your IRA or your bank account, right, you're checking your savings. Those are just digits on a screen. And the sooner people understand that, I think the sooner they get more comfortable with holding physical gold, physical silver in their possession.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to remind the viewers before we end here, you guys are one of the only ones who actually have a storefront. People, and you guys have clients in all 50 states, right? And plus worldwide.
Yep.
Yep. And you guys can so if someone, invests or, puts their money, saves it through your firm, how does it work? Can they either receive physical gold or a certificate, or is it how they want it, or you can store it?
Yeah, so if you do a cash purchase, that would be gold that we would mail right to your doorstep, fully insured. We mail out probably millions of dollars of gold and silver every week. With an IRA, you're required by the IRS to have a depository, because if you took physical possession of your holdings in your IRA, that would look like a distribution, right? And that person would have to pay the taxes. What we use is IDS Depository out of Dallas, Texas. That's the one that I prefer, because my feeling is when what hits the fan, my feeling is a place like Dallas, Texas is a good locality to have your holdings. Right, life will probably remain pretty stable in a place like Dallas. So, that's something also to consider, is what depository do you go to? A lot of companies use, Delaware. I'm not so comfortable with Delaware. I don't know about Delaware, right? It's Biden's hometown.
Yeah.
So with an IRA, you have to use an IRS approved facility, but you can, trade on it just like you would anything else.
But Vlad, to answer your question, it's all physical. No certificate.
Yeah, no certificate.
So even if it's at a depository or like a Brinks facility, it's actual physical. So just like your current IRA, where you can log in and see, what stocks you have and, the values, you can do the same thing. It'd be itemized. It might say, you have 1,000 ounces of American Silver Eagles, right? You have 15, ounces of American Gold Eagles, et cetera, right? So you can actually go in there and log in like your current retirement account and see what you have itemized, what the values are over time.
Product specific.
Correct.
Okay. And you guys are the only gold, silver, precious metal IRA company that is backed by Sebastian Gorka himself. For
Dr. G.
Yeah. So for everyone watching, down below in the description, I'm going to leave links to their podcast, the Boomerang podcast. You guys actually did a whole episode with Sebastian Gorka, right?
Yep. We interviewed
I saw
him.
the video. Go subscribe, show him some love. And guys, also links to contact them. Right now is the time to save yourself from Bidenomics. And I just want to remind everyone, when Trump was in office, how expensive gold got, how expensive silver got. Right now, it is a little bit cheaper than it was, right? If not a lot cheaper, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, gold hit about 21 and change under Trump, and we're sitting at about the mid 18s right now.
So if you go invest, put your money in, one, you're protecting it. Two, we all know Trump's going to win 2024 in a landslide. I guarantee that the economy will be restored. He did it twice. He'll do it again. And you'll actually make an investment. So for me personally, like when it comes to Bitcoin, I've been learning about it, but I don't know enough. But from my research, you know what, if let's say the whole internet thing, everything collapses, what happens with Bitcoin? Let's say you got a bunch of Bitcoin.
You'd have to wait for them to turn the internet back on. And if you have it on cold storage, maybe it'll, I don't know. If all the internet goes out and we have a complete blackout, probably have much bigger things to worry about than the Bitcoin. But I'm not really sure.
Like I said, I think this country is going to go through bankruptcy, and there's no other way to get rid of the bureaucracy in DC. How do you get rid of the corruption? How do you get rid of all these, right? The tens of thousands of government employees. The way you do it is you put the country through bankruptcy. Trump will walk the country through bankruptcy, and hopefully on the other side of this, we'll have some real booming industry, and those who hold, the physical gold, physical silver, they'll have constitutional money ready to go.
All right. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for your time. I think maybe we should do a video sometime later, maybe talk about, like you guys said, you're well informed on Bitcoin, just kind of educate the audience on what's out there, what's happening. Because the one thing that schools in America should teach, but they don't, is money.
Right.
Is money. And so how to handle money, how to save money, how to invest. But I appreciate your guys' time. Everyone, go in the description. You can, the number and the website for Midas Gold Group, everything's down there. Reach out, mention Vlad from American News Network. They'll hook you up. They'll give you free silver when you invest with an IRA. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel. Show them some love. We're out.